It's the Happy Families podcast with me, Dr. Justin Coulson, the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now. I'm a dad to 6 daughters, the author of 6 parenting books, and today, something a little different. I'm having a brief conversation with somebody who's done a study that I think you're going to be fascinated by. I'm speaking with Dr Kathryn Modecki from the Menzies Health Institute of Queensland at the School of Applied Psychology at Griffith University. And you know that topic that, it gets under people's skin. You're in the park with your kids, you see a parent on the phone, or you're in the shopping centre, or you're in a restaurant, and parents are on their phone rather than paying attention to their children. Well, it was only a matter of time, and we finally got some pretty good research looking at how that affects children and whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. And Kathryn, so appreciate you having a chat with me just now. I'd love for you to tell me a bit about this research, what inspired it, and what you did in your study to discover whether this is a problem or whether we're hyperventilating about not so much.
Absolutely. So this actually began as a partnership with the ABC for National Science Week. This is response from parents across Australia. These are more than 3,500 responses. And parents reported on their different ways of using their smartphone, the amount of time they were using their smartphones and texting and using social network sites. They also reported on conflicts in the family around the parents' smartphone use and displacing time with the displacing time with the family due to their phones, as well as the parent-child relationship.
Yeah, because that's one of the big things, isn't it, Kathryn? You know, people will say, and I've certainly been one who said it, one of the biggest challenges we have with our smartphone use is not that there's anything necessarily wrong with using the smartphone, it's what it's actually interfering with or displacing. If I'm staring at my phone, I'm not engaging with my child.
Exactly. And in a lot of ways, a smartphone has come, I would argue, to sort of represent something beyond what it's actually doing. So, it sort of represents the attention sometimes maybe we're not getting, or that, closest we're not necessarily feeling. But absolutely. And it's really, there's been a lot in the media in particular, and certain scholars sort of arguing that the smartphone is problem. But as a parent, that it also allows us to get our work done. It allows us to find support, find information. So it's not just one thing. And so the goal here was sort of to say, well, if this is a problem, we have the type of data that will absolutely find it. So we have this huge sample. We have the measures that are being used in studies. Let's take an exploratory approach, being open to the possibility that this might not be a problem, that this might be okay. And so we started with over 1,000 ways of looking at these data, these different variables. And we soon decided, as you're saying, that really the story here is about, whether or not the smartphone time is displacing time with my family or causing conflicts with my family. But what was surprising is overall, the pattern really was a positive relation, meaning more time across 12 different measures of smartphone use was associated with better quality parent-child relationship, self-reported by parents, as long as there wasn't heaps of displacement of time with family. So as long as this is not becoming a huge source of avoidance of your family or a huge source of conflict in the family, more time, if anything, is associated with better relationships, certainly not worse.
Now, this is really curious to me. When I'm thinking about the central aspects of what makes relationships in the family work, I think, something that I say all the time is that just like dollars are the currency of our economy, connection is the currency of our relationship. And to me, it seems that a smartphone is going to interfere with connection. I might be in the middle of a conversation with my wife or one of my kids. The phone rings. I get it. There's a text message come through. I just remember that I've got to respond to that email. And all of a sudden, my attention diverts from that beloved family member to that phone that I can pick up and cradle and caress and touch and get a different kind of feedback from very, very quickly. I get to be efficient and productive and do all those things. Now, surely that's going to be, your research is suggesting no, but I would have thought logically that's going to interfere with my relationship.
Let's talk about it. So interference with your relationship is different than smartphone use. And so one of the issues is that in the literature, the title will say smartphone use is associated with, problems. But if you look at what's being measured, it's that disruption, which you're talking about. So 2 things. First of all, there's different ways to be using your phone. So you can be texting or on a phone call, and you can still have eye contact. You can still be sort of giving that attention if your child's on the sports field or on the playground, while still dealing with other things that would normally take you physically away from the child. So we did find a difference in terms of immersive forms. So if you're just scrolling social network sites and very, very immersed, the effect is not as positive when compared to, for instance, phone calls. So that's one. But two, I think, parents are in this position where they're dealing with norms, right? So we're with our child, but the outside world also expects our ready attention. And so it's sort of navigating that. It's sort of choosing your time, I would say, in terms of when your child needs you. But I'm also going to counter with the fact that exactly a warm and supportive parent-child relationship, give good communication with your child, and a parent not bringing stress over into the parent-child relationship. And there are ways that smartphones can actually support that, right? So I can reach out to family, I can find information, I can sort of help myself cope in other ways. I can physically be with my child rather than being at work. But it's also, as you say, it's navigating, right? And so, sorry, if it's an emergency call, I'm telling my kids, this is only going to be a minute, it's only work, and then I will come back. So it's navigating, I would argue, those norms. But again, this finding also is when we're keeping that displacement from key time with your family at a lower level.
Yeah. So I'm really curious about how there is that positive relationship between warmth and smartphone usage, so long as it's not interference. Okay, so interference seems to be the key word. If I'm doing something and the duration of the call is lengthy and I'm being interrupted and it's getting in the way of my relationship, then that doesn't have any redeeming value or quality at all. But generally, if I'm using my phone more, I can still be warm to my child. And I'd love for you to just explain how that might work in a practical sense.
Yeah, well, first of all, let me step back and say these are cross-sectional data. So
yes, so it's correlation.
On one hand, and so at one hand, this was speaking to arguments that really were sort of getting under my, grilling my onion, so to speak, this idea that sort of phones are to blame, which of course suggests if we just took away the phones, everyone would be a better parent, which of course we know is not the case. So on one hand, I'm not saying that if everyone gets a phone or uses their phone more, somehow they're going to be a warmer parent by any means. But I think the reality is we use our phones for in a variety of ways across the day. It's embedded in our lives. And to the extent that we're sort of negotiating that effectively in our family system, it's certainly not taking away from the relationship, if that makes sense. I would also say, in terms of, we know that, for instance, moderate amounts of online coping, so using the phone to get information, for short-term distraction to bring you down when you're stressed, for reaching out for support, we know in other research that can be really effective for coping with stressors. So on one hand, I suspect having that connection is helping me be a better parent. I think also these parents are also probably navigating very well or better than others in terms of that family dynamic that, okay, when I need to be on the phone, it's not speaking and not wanting to spend time with you. I need to do this and then I'm back with you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it sounds like what the study's doing is giving credit to parents for being able to be selective around when they're using their devices and when they're not. So you used the example before, if your child's on the sport field, you don't have to pay attention to the cricket game for the next 4 hours. You can just look up every now and again and clap your hands and say, well done, well bowled, and then get back to your emails or the book that you're reading. Like you said, it's not just smartphone technology. If we got rid of the smartphones, parents would still be reading books, they'd still be watching television, they'd still be distracted with any number of other things. The other thing that I was going to say is just this idea of it being cross-sectional or correlational research. So there's a correlation between warmth and smartphone use. That is, it could be argued that parents who are using their smartphones more tend to be warmer, but it could also be that warmer parents tend to use their smartphone more. In other words, if you're the kind of person who is social and amenable and nurturing in relationships offline, you're probably going to be doing that online as well, not just with your family, but with your friends and with that social network that exists inside the device.
Yeah, that's a good point, as long as the displacement is low. So actually, if we just look at time with parenting, surprisingly, we found almost no relationship, which is interesting because that's not sort of what, we've taken as law that, straight smartphone use was associated with problems in the family. But you're absolutely correct. You could interpret that two ways.
So when you look at this study and sort of pull out the real take-homes, what encouragement would you give to parents when it comes to the choices that they're making around having devices active and usable at the same time that family members might be around?
Well, first of all, this is something we're all dealing with. And I'm sure you say this to parents as well, that I don't think guilt and parenting go together very well at all. I think it's counterproductive. The reality is smartphones are in our day-to-day life, right? And so letting ourselves off the hook about, what it's about is, as you would be saying to parents as well, it's about warm relationships, it's strong communication, it's reducing the stress spillover with kids, it's being available at times that are ultimately, necessary to be there. So it's making smart choices, but also taking care of yourself as a parent and communicating with your kids and partners, those around you, why you're on the phone, when you're on the phone, and making it clear that it's not due to sort of not being interested in your child, and making it clear you are available at key times.
Yeah, great. I love that. So just to summarize, make sure that I didn't miss anything. There are some times where you really want to make sure that you're available and get the phone out of the environment so you can connect and can concentrate. Sometimes are simply more important than others. But secondly, make sure that you're utilizing your devices in a way that is restorative and regenerative for you, so that when you put the device down, you can actually be at your best for the people that you love the most.
Absolutely.
Well, Kathy, this has been a delightful conversation. Thanks so much for telling us about your brand new study. If people wanted to find out more about the work that you're doing, where would you send them?
www.modernlifestudy.com. And actually, we are now in phase 2 of a follow-up study trying to tap people's experiences, particularly in Australia, during the COVID-19. Because, of course, now more than ever, we're juggling family, work, and we're finding the role of technology playing all sorts of different roles. So I suggest folks look at the website. You can see some of our findings and also register if you're interested in participating in phase 2. www.modernlifestudy.com.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much, Dr. Kathryn Modecki. We will put those details for the study and the website into our show notes, and I'll also pop them on my Facebook page and in my newsletter so everyone can find out about it. It's been great chatting with you. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Well, I hope that's helpful from Dr. Kathryn Modecki. If you've enjoyed the podcast, would you do something for me? Could you jump into iTunes on the Apple Podcasts app and leave a rating and a review? It's the ratings and reviews that help people to find out how awesome the podcast is and help people to make their families happy. I was so grateful. In the last couple of weeks, there's been a whole lot of really lovely reviews come through, including one that came from Snelly Tribe, which says, "So worth the listen." This is a 5-star review. I love these podcasts. Although my tribe are older now, 2018, 17 and 15, I'm still getting so much from these. They are relevant even with adult children. Thank you so much. Just wish I had these to guide us when they were small. Really appreciated that. And also another one that came from Emily, a learning support educator, who said, "Always love listening to your podcast. Such great advice, and I always implement it into my personal and work life." Thank you. Well, thank you, Emily, for that. Zugzog CCV was the 5-star review that came through there. So thank you very much for those reviews. For more information on how I can help your family flourish, particularly if you'd like to have ongoing monthly support via our amazing Happy Families memberships, visit happyfamilies.com.au and click on memberships for all the info. You can have a parenting expert in your pocket, me, at your side, all day, every day kind of thing, with the memberships from as little as $10 a month if you take out an annual membership. The family's getting bigger and happier every day. Or you can go to my Facebook page, Dr. Justin Coulson's Happy Families.